So, VK on the beat, check. I'm in Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto, where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto, like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1649 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Building Toronto's Skyline, a podcast and book from Nick Iones, sponsored by Fusion Corp Construction Management, Inc. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making her Toronto Mic debut, is Ali Weinstein. Welcome, Ali.
Thank you, Toronto Mike. It's nice to be here.
Thank you. Finally, somebody addressing me by my proper title, Toronto Mike. None of this Mike nonsense. Good to meet you. I love the sweater you're wearing.
Thank you so much. I wore it especially for you. It's actually never made an appearance outside of my house.
I'm honored. I'm honored. Okay, so is this like a retro sweater, or is it like faux retro where you make it now to look like it used to look?
It's faux retro. So it's the old school Ontario Place sweater, which is in some of the early 1971 promotional material, archival material of Ontario Place. And actually a couple of friends of mine, Vivian and Caitlin, made it for me as a gift at the TIFF premiere. They presented it to me. Yeah.
TIFF. So the 2024 Toronto International Film Festival. That's what TIFF stands for. Okay, I did my homework. Okay. But your documentary is called Your Tomorrow. I wanted to call it Your Toronto, but no, it's called Your Tomorrow.
Right.
And it was the second runner-up for the People's Choice Award for documentaries. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Like off the top. So obviously now we've introduced, you've got the great Ontario Place sweater. Yep. We are definitely going to talk about your Toronto. You know what? Why do I do that?
Because you're Toronto Mike.
Okay, thank you. I need you. What are you doing with your life? Would you like to co-host this program and explain all my blunders and my misspeaks? Your Tomorrow is the name of this doc. Can you tell us off the top, because we're going to talk about Ontario Place, and we're going to talk about you as a filmmaker, and then I have some more serious discussion as well. Okay. Even though Ontario Place is very, very serious as far as I'm concerned. But where can somebody stream Your Tomorrow? Where can somebody see this documentary?
Starting March 21st, it's going to be viewable across the country on TVO's YouTube channel for free.
So can you see it today? Like if somebody hears us today, this is March 12th. Can somebody watch Your Tomorrow?
No, it's not viewable right now. I mean, last night there was a theatrical screening in Hamilton. We're still sort of doing a few little one-off screenings, but I believe that's the last one we have scheduled prior to the online release. And also here in Ontario, on March 23rd, it's going to be broadcast on TVO at 9 p.m. in case you would prefer to watch on your TV
you know what?
screen.
We might want to kick it old school. So what day is that TVO premiere that you just mentioned?
March 23rd.
Okay, I'm taking a note here in my calendar. So this is an order for the FOTMs listening. That means Friends of Toronto Mike. You're now an FOTM, Ali.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored.
I think you've been on the show long enough now. It's been 3 minutes. I think you qualify.
It feels friendly.
Are you, maybe this has happened, I apologize if it has. Have you been a guest of Steve Pakin's on the agenda yet?
No, I actually haven't. And I
can text him during this chat.
Please?
I think Ontario Place falls right in the agenda domain.
Yeah. And my film was licensed by TVO. Yeah. So it should
So
happen.
the marketing department will give thumbs up because it cross promotes.
Exactly.
Maybe something that airs when you can actually, maybe just before or maybe the day of that premiere you told me about on TVO.
I think that you should help me make it happen.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Paikin owes me some favors. I'm gonna call it in. Have you ever met Polkaroo?
No, I haven't. That's funny. My dad is a filmmaker as well. Maybe we'll get into that more later since you mentioned you want to talk about me as a filmmaker.
Yeah,
but
we can do it now.
Well, he had an idea about making
This is Larry.
That's right.
Yeah. I know, I did my homework. Okay, so Larry's a filmmaker.
Yeah, that's right.
Go on.
Well, I was just going to say that he has an idea to make a documentary about Polkaroo specifically because...
Oh my God. So, you know what? Go get your dad. I need him on Toronto Mic only because the amount of time I have a regular, I would say frequent episodes with Ed Conroy, who's also known as Retro Ontario.
I know him.
Later, I have a song I pulled from his YouTube channel and I always endorse. He's an FOTM Hall of Famer. Okay. So I'm always promoting Ed Conroy's work.
Yeah.
But we often, I mean, I'm older than you. Okay. I grew up in the 80s, particularly the early 80s. This is what's forming me. And there's a lot of TVO in that mix.
Yeah.
And Polkaroo, I think Gen X Ontarians, is that how you call us, Ontarians?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we deserve a Polkaroo documentary.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm going to tell my dad that there's at least one viewer who wants to see it.
And at least one podcaster will talk to Larry about Polkaroo.
Yeah, you guys should workshop the idea. Maybe, is he allowed to come on this podcast like in pre-development stage to talk about the... Okay.
Of course. So Larry Weinstein, if you're listening, will Larry listen to this episode of Toronto Mic with his daughter?
He actually will because I think he's my biggest fan. Like he has that Google alert on me and like when he has the ability to listen to this online, he will listen to it. He'll be the first person listening.
So, growing up in a home with a filmmaker like Larry Weinstein, did you just see your dad doing his thing and say, I want to do that?
Kind of. I didn't realize it for a while. Like, I think what I saw was that he was a total workaholic, but I didn't think of it as being a workaholic. He just really, really loved what he did. And I think for a long time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I went to school for like English and philosophy.
I went to school for English and history.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not sure why I did it, except you need to do something after high school.
Exactly. And I think we did come up during a time where it was just like get an education, and that's changed a lot in terms of, I mean, the job market's
now it's different. Like go be a plumber.
Yeah, which is smart.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I think after undergrad I was like, maybe I'll keep studying and become a professor. And there's just like something clicked for me one day where I kind of cut out a section. I also then went to law school for a little bit, but then I
don't bury the lead here. Why did you quit law school?
I quit law school because I realized I had no idea why I was there other than to like stroke my own ego. Like I was like, oh, it was like a test of like, can I do well at the LSAT? Can I get into law school? Like this is what a lot of people who came out of my English program did in order to get work. And so when I got into law school, I was like, I guess I'll go. And then I got there and realized other people wanted to be lawyers. And I was like, oh shit, I don't think I want to be a lawyer.
So you went to law school and then you had this epiphany like, the down the road, you're going to have to like, I don't know what that's called, pass the bar or something. And you had to become like Lauren Honickman or something.
It just wasn't for me. So I quit. I didn't really have a plan B. And then I just started connecting the dots and I realized what my dad does, because he makes documentaries specifically. He has worked a little bit with actors in his documentaries, but I felt like it was like getting really deep into ideas, writing essays, almost being like a sociologist or a historian, depending what your film's about, and just making a visual essay in a way. So I just got intrigued by it and kind of started to dip my toes into that and eventually went to school for it.
What's your favorite Larry Weinstein film?
Oh, wow. Actually, I have a few.
Have you seen a Larry Weinstein film?
There's definitely a lot I haven't seen. He's really prolific. He's been really prolific. I think growing up, my favorite was one called Mozart Balls, which he made a lot of films for a long time about classical music and composers. Oh. And Mozart Balls in particular is not so much about Mozart as a man or a composer, but more about a few different people that he found who are obsessed with Mozart and their stories. And it was just, it's like a real character study, and you end up learning quite a lot about Mozart through it. Like one of the characters in that film is a person who believes that Mozart walked into her body, and she now is the modern day reincarnation of Mozart.
Whoa. Okay.
So like stories as interesting as that. So I loved that film growing up. And then, but I think now as an adult, the one I have the most appreciation for is probably his most popular film, which I don't know how widely known it actually is.
No, let me hear it. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, it's called September Songs, the music of Kurt Weill. I think it came out in 96 or something like that.
I feel like Dave Hodge would be all over that. Okay. Shout out to Dave Hodge, listening in Grimsby.
It's a film about Kurt Weill, the German composer. But it is a performance film, and he got some really great, huge names to be a part of it, like PJ Harvey and Lou Reed.
Okay, so we're going to revisit PJ Harvey because when we do get into Ontario Place talk, I'm going to drop the name of an FOTM who named his daughter after PJ Harvey.
Oh, cool.
That's a teaser, but please continue with those name dropping. I want to hear more
cool.
names. So PJ Harvey, who was the next name?
Lou Reed.
Wow.
Yeah,
Kevin Hearn was with Lou Reed when Lou Reed passed. Kevin Hearn now currently with the Bare Naked Ladies.
Oh, wow.
He helped Lou Reed with his shedding his mortal coil.
Oh my gosh.
And he did the same for Gord Downey.
Wow.
Can I tell you, Kevin, we need a documentary about Kevin Hearn.
Helping people pass
just
away.
Because of, well, he's so just really in a nutshell, again, I just think he's a lovely human being.
Yeah.
I've done a couple episodes of him. But Hayden Desser, Hayden is a great singer-songwriter who I just love, and now he's become a friend because our boys were in soccer together at High Park. Hayden Desser's special needs daughter is in a school because Kevin Hearn's special needs daughter was in this special school, and they did that. Meanwhile, so Kevin Hearn, is there for Lou Reed as Lou Reed exits, is there for Gord Downey. When Peter Mansbridge is talking to Gord Downey at the very end, and he has to read Peter Mansbridge's name on his hand to remember his name. That's Kevin Hearn's living room.
Oh, wow.
I know. Here I'm.
Wow. No, that's fascinating.
And I say Larry should make a movie about Kevin Hearn, but really, Ali, you should make the Kevin Hearn movie. Keep that gold for yourself.
Maybe we'll make one together. I don't know.
Well, since you did that, unless you want to drop another name after PJ Harvey.
No. Well, okay, the other name I was going to mention is Nick Cave is also in that film.
Are the bad seeds there as well, or just Nick?
I think it's just Nick.
That's amazing, though. That's amazing.
My dad likes to take credit for bringing him and PJ together romantically.
Okay.
Because apparently it started during that shoot, but I'm sure my dad is just making that up. Anyway. Well,
we don't know that. But where have you been all my life, Ali? That's the kind of gold I'm looking for. Okay. Have you ever collaborated with your father on a film?
Yes. The answer is yes. We made a film that came out in 2018. I'm just trying to remember if that 2018 or 2019.
2019.
Thank you. It's called The Impossible Swim, and it wasn't a feature film. It's a 47-minute TV documentary. It aired on TSN. And it's about 3 women, but mostly one young woman, who are all long distance open water swimmers. And
shout out to Marilyn Bell.
That's right. She's in the film.
She's still with us.
She is.
I had a correspondence with her daughter. And
no way.
Marilyn Bell is from this neck of the woods. So
yeah,
she's got a mural in New Toronto. That's the neighborhood you're in now. And she was coached by Gus Ryder. Gus Ryder, there's a pool named for Gus Ryder, a stone's throw from here. Yeah. And along with her, there's a guy named Cliff Lumsden, who is a open water being trained by Gus Ryder. And literally this morning, I took a photo of my bike. I put it on my Blue Sky account of my bike in Cliff Lumsden Park.
Oh, cool.
Back to the open water swimmers. That's here. Wild. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, a lot of amazing open water swimmers from this neck of the woods, and a lot of women. I mean, Cliff too, but lots of women.
Sure. Well, Marilyn Bell is just a living legend.
She is. Yeah, she is.
And Cliff Lumsden, when he passed away, his funeral was at Ridley Funeral Home, which is 14th and Lakeshore. Brad Jones from Ridley Funeral Home has a great podcast called Life's Undertaken, and he sent over for you, Ali, a measuring tape from Ridley Funeral Home.
This is so cool. I actually need this because when you're trying to buy clothes online, I never know what size I am, and I don't have one of these. This is perfect.
Well, now, finally, we've taken care of that. We've solved another problem for you, Ali. We're going to try to solve all the problems in this conversation. I've been itching to crack open my Great Lakes. Yeah. So this is from Great Lakes Brewery, brewed right here in Southern Etobicoke. Delicious craft beer. This one's cold. Yeah.
Oh, great.
So
Okay.
in front of the mic, we'll listen to you crack open your GLB lager.
All right. Let's see if I can do it. Hang on.
Okay, you passed the first test there. I actually have, they brought over a fighting weight. This is the Octopus Wants to Fight, but it's the fighting weight version, and it's an IPA.
Oh, nice. That sounded good.
Well, I've only done it 1,649 times. So cheers to you.
Cheers. Thanks for the beer.
Get you all relaxed here. And you are bringing some home. I don't know if Larry gets any of these or if
That's
they're all
so
for Ali,
nice.
but you got some fresh craft beer. From
Thank
Great Lakes.
you.
That's the pause while I slurp. Okay. Well, let me get this out of the way, and then we're going to dive into Ontario Place.
Yeah.
But I have in my freezer upstairs a large lasagna from Palma Pasta. Would you like some delicious lasagna to take home with you?
Yes, I would love that. Truly.
It's a trick question. Not a trick question. Okay, so you'll get your Palma Pasta lasagna, and then just a piece of information for you, for Larry, for all the listeners. We're all gathering at Great Lakes Brewery on June 26, 2025 from 6 to 9 p.m. Great Lakes Brewery is 30 Queen Elizabeth Boulevard near the Costco, like Royal York and Queensway area. And Palma Pasta is going to feed us. So Great Lakes will buy you your first pint, and then Palma will feed you. So, Ali, if you're in town, you should come to this. You get free food, drink. We can hang out for a bit. It would be awesome to have you at TMLX 18.
Sounds fun.
All right, we're going to get to Ontario Place very soon. But I did, before we get there, I was going to ask you about just like another small world story. So I do some work for a place called the Bespoke Wellness Clinic, and they're at 1 Yorkville. And this came through Dominic Shulo, who's the first videographer in the country, because Moses had him doing that at City TV. He's actually an interesting guy. But there's a gentleman I would talk to whose father is Ron Taylor. So Ron Taylor's son, I've interviewed him twice, not for Toronto Mike, but for this Bespoke Wellness clinic. And did you do a documentary on Ron Taylor, Dr. Baseball?
Yeah, you've definitely been doing your research. So I worked on it. I didn't actually, I wasn't the filmmaker behind it, but it came about. I didn't expect to be talking so much about my dad on this podcast today. I don't normally do that, but it came about directly through my dad because my dad co-directed a documentary with Ron Taylor's son, Drew.
Drew, yeah. Drew. And because he's in this world of like regenerative medicine.
Okay, yeah.
This is like where he lives, and that's how I got to speak to him at Bespoke.
I see. So Drew, I don't know, do you know that he's a documentary filmmaker, that he made a documentary?
I do not know this, no.
Okay, yeah. So he made this documentary with my dad. It's called Our Man in Tehran, and it's the documentary behind the Argo story.
Right, because we got cut out of that Hollywood film, right?
Exactly.
Canada.
Yeah. So they worked on that together, and after that, I don't know. I think Drew was making this short film about his dad, and at the time, I was sort of coming out of film school, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do in the film landscape, and I had just been learning how to edit, and I think my dad marketed me as an editor, and so Drew hired me.
This is the Larry Show. Like at some point, we will get to Ontario Place. Is he going to come back? Does he have a role in the new documentary or tomorrow? Larry?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'll bring him. I can bring him into the story. I can find a way.
It's funny. Yesterday's episode of Toronto Mike was only possible because of a guy named Larry. Different Larry, but I've always liked the name Larry. Like I just like say, hey, that's my buddy. It's Larry.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are naming their dogs Larry these days. It kind of has this old school.
Larry. Hey, get Larry. Hey, we need some help moving this couch. I'll call Larry.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So you did work with Drew Taylor. And
it's
Ron
the one
Taylor's
film
dad.
I've ever edited. Been credited as an editor on. So, yeah.
All right. And there's one more place I want to go, and it's Honest Ed's. Can we go to Honest Ed's? I, again, older than you, born and raised in Toronto. And for my grandmother, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, my grandmother no longer with us, lived a long life, got to 98.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty good.
I think that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
But the big event for her, because she lived in Toronto and then she moved up north. And when she'd come down to Toronto, the big event would be a visit to Honest Ed's. Like this was the biggest thing to do. We're going to go to Honest Ed's. So I have all these memories of going to Honest Ed's. And now, it was like a big deal to go to this Honest Ed's, and got warm fuzzies for Honest Ed's as a result. But did you produce There's No Place Like This Place, Any Place?
I did. Yeah, it's like the world's longest title for a film. I did. Yeah. So I I had made a couple of films at that point as a director, and I was working as an associate producer, and I thought maybe I would like to become a producer. I just thought maybe it's more sustainable than directing. And someone that I knew through film school was telling me that they were making a film about honest Eds, and that's Lulu Way.
Right.
And when I learned that Lulu was doing that, when I learned that, I'm playing with the measuring tape.
Nervous energy's got to
The
come
measuring
out
tape, I didn't think it would make so much noise.
This isn't the CBC, don't worry.
So yeah, when Lulu told me that they were making this film about honest Eds, I got really excited because I was happy that somebody was doing it, knowing that it was shutting down. I think it was after they'd already had their big party in 2016 shutting the place down, but before the redevelopment had started.
Right.
And it just made me happy someone was documenting this place that we all love so much.
Well, I'm glad you did that because, we talked about poker. All these things need to be, that's kind of what I'm trying to do in this basement, but I like it when you professionals do it with a documentary. Right? But I'm glad somebody's documenting it. Do you know what the current status of the Honest Ed sign is?
That's a good question. I don't.
I'm full of good questions, Ali.
I know. I was reading something about it recently, but I feel like if I say it, I'm not going to get it right.
Allegedly, and then you say it.
I mean, it's sitting somewhere waiting to be put on a building, which, I can't remember now if they're going to put it either on the new Honest Ed's condo, or if it's going to be
some Mervish enterprise.
Yeah, some Mervish enterprise, but it's sitting in storage somewhere.
So you remember those little artsy stores that were on Markham Street? I think it's Markham Street. I used to buy my Asterix comics at a place on that street here.
The Beguiling?
I don't remember the name,
okay.
because honestly, I was so young, I wasn't even going alone. I think I had to go with a parent or something. Mm-hmm. But I remember, I remember if I had $5, I could get an Asterix comic, and that's what I would do every time I went to Honest Ed's. I'd go to this place on Markham Street and buy my Asterix comics. I had all these comic books for my kids. None of them were interested even a little bit in it. And then finally, I literally went on Blue Sky and said, "Free to a good home." I had all these Asterix comics I held on to.
Yeah.
So excited to give them to a child of mine who would take them in the way. I love them so much. Ali, I love them.
Yeah.
Let's do a documentary about Asterix. Okay. I have all these ideas. Anyway, I ended up giving them to a stranger who passed them on to his son. So anyway, that's the story of my Asterix.
Well, that's
comics.
nice.
They went to someone. I didn't want to recycle them. All that blood, sweat, and tears there. Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to shout out before we get to Ontario Place? I know, you directed Blessed.
Oh, that's right.
You forgot about that? Not so good? Avoid it? Is that what you're telling me? Everyone avoid Blessed.
No.
Hashtag Blessed. Sorry. Or is it Blessed?
I call it Blessed. I call it Blessed. For me, the hashtag at the start of the title is silent. No. I think it's a strong film. It's an interesting film. It's, when you work on something and it's the process of making it is embedded with the work itself.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
So anyway, it came out right at the start of the pandemic, and some of the last it was a challenge in the final birthing moments of that film, and so I think I'm wow, and it didn't really.
You can't separate the. It's like when you eat a hot dog, right? It's like if you just saw a doc on how they made the hot dog, you can't really separate these things.
Yeah. But I mean, it's an interesting film, and yeah.
Okay, so
Blessed.
You did make that. That's on the definitive record.
Yeah. It's about young people in Toronto who were going to this church called C3, which is an evangelical church. People might be more familiar with a different church called Hillsong because Justin Bieber went to it at one point. A really, really big evangelical mega church that came out of Australia originally. And C3 has actually got a super similar story, also originally from Australia, just hundreds and hundreds of churches around the world. And one came to Toronto in the 2010s or 2012 or something like that and just got really successful. And I think I read about it and I was just shocked because I'm also from Toronto, grew up here, and I just felt that the people my age, I was surprised they were going to church. So the film is about
I'm shocked if I find out somebody my age is going to any place of worship.
Yeah.
It's I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
By the way, so we're going to dive into your Toronto and Ontario place. I got some audio here to guide us along, and then we're going to have a serious chat about something else. But I am curious what your next project is, and do you hate that question? Like, I would think if I was a filmmaker and I'm not, like, it's not even on TVO yet. We have to wait a couple of weeks here. Like, don't ask me about the next thing. Like, I'm all about your Toronto right now. But do you know, like, are you already working on the next thing?
Yeah, you said you were Toronto again.
What did I call it?
You're Toronto.
Oh my God.
It's okay.
You're tomorrow.
You're tomorrow. You're tomorrow. No, I don't think it's a bad question. I mean, if I had an answer to it, it would be a great question because then I could plug my next project. But I don't.
Or at least give me an idea of what you're working on, and then maybe behind the scenes I could be like, oh, you know, you should talk to this person or whatever. I don't know. I could play producer or something. Yeah,
I mean, the reality is I actually don't know what my next project is. This one definitely took it out of me. It was an observational film. We'll get into it, but it was really...
Well, let's get into it now. I'm going into it right now. So, Ali, in fact, because we need to drink a little beer and take a breath here, let's spend a couple of minutes listening to the trailer, and then we're going to talk about it.
Okay, sounds good.
This is the place to start. This is the place to grow.
The vision and scope of Ontario Place, ladies and gentlemen, gives promise of our vast potential.
In the first years, people loved it. But then something very strange happened. The government did not understand what had been created. This is a place that we have been repeatedly told is dead, is derelict, nobody comes here, and it's up for grabs.
I feel like I was having a really rough day today, and I feel like instantly calm, all right?
We got everybody aboard? All aboard?
Ontario Place was meant to be a showcase for how wonderful, Ontario is, and by extension, Canada.
There are major changes proposed for Ontario Place. A 7-story glass-enclosed spa and water park is being pushed by the province, which owns most of the land.
You are going to take a tour of the West Island at Ontario Place. Now it's just a sad patch of abandoned pavement. I'm going to show you what Therma Canada has in store.
The public space is going to be taken away from us here bit by bit.
It takes community to stand up for this.
This beach is an absolute magical piece of art. This is a piece of art that you can experience and explore.
Look at this!
Yeah, I love
so
it.
pretty today.
I wish I could live here forever.
All right, Ali, my notes here say it's called Your Tomorrow. Okay, I realize it's my mouth when I start saying the word tomorrow does like do a swerve on me, and then my mouth ends up saying Toronto, and I apologize. I have no idea why it keeps happening. But your tomorrow. No, it's just weird. It's like, what's wrong with me? Okay, can you psychoanalyze me for the next half hour, Ali? Do you have that kind of time for this? Okay,
Yeah.
So Your Tomorrow is about Ontario Place, and listeners of this program know Ontario Place comes up often. There's a quarterly episode with Ed Keenan where we talk about what's happening at Ontario Place. I personally biked back when we could access Ontario Place. I would often bike, and you talk about the West Island, but that was a biking destination I've been doing for about a decade now. Yesterday, just to give a little context before we hear from you, yesterday I biked to Trillium Park, which you can still access, but there's it's not nice at all. It's a big gate that prevents you from accessing Ontario Place from Trillium Park. So you cannot, us great unwashed, we can't get to Ontario Place right now. But I did take a photo of my bike. I put it on Blue Sky yesterday. And in the background, you can see Ontario Place, which is essentially what it looks like now is the Cinesphere. And then it's just a flat dirt. Like there's no trees. There's nothing. It's been completely raised, if you will. So let's begin, because we're going to talk for a good half an hour here about Ontario Place. But can you share with me your memories of Ontario Place?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I feel like a bit of a loser, but listening to the trailer, which I've never just listened to the trailer before.
It is weird because there's a lot of visuals in that trailer,
Yeah.
and you cannot see them on.
But
this
it
podcast.
works. It works without the visuals. I felt like a little emotional listening to it, which I feel like that's why I feel like a loser, like getting emotional at my own work. But
No, because when I was listening to it, so, for 2 minutes, we sat here and just listened to it in real time. It wasn't added in post, okay? And I was feeling like it felt like a funeral.
Yeah. I hear you.
It was sad.
Yeah, actually, like last night at this screening that I mentioned before in Hamilton, I said to the audience at some point that my original intention was to make a love letter to Ontario Place, and someone raised their hand and said, you said it was supposed to be a love letter, but it kind of feels more like a eulogy.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, which is very sad. It makes me sad because, your question was about my memories there, and my strongest memories actually are just from within the last 5 years, from rediscovering it in 2020 as an adult during the pandemic.
Right.
But yes, I did go there as a kid because I grew up in Toronto, and I think my childhood memories of Ontario Place are mostly the water park and the log ride. So both parts of Ontario Place that were added after the fact, like I don't know the exact dates, in the 80s or the 90s at some point. Like my parents, though, to bring my dad back into the story.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Larry in 18 minutes, okay?
My parents were both born in Toronto as well, so they have their own
What's your mom's name?
Mary.
Mary and Larry. Oh my God, Mary and Larry. My mom's name is Mary, by the way.
Oh, cool.
There you
It's a
go.
good name.
Something in common here. Okay. So Mary and Larry, they would go to Ontario Place back in the day?
Back in the day, yeah. And I wish I could bring my mom more into it right now, but she hasn't told me like super vivid stories of Ontario Place. My dad, on the other hand, remembers going when it first opened, and he has this like
When did it first open?
It opened in May 1971.
Okay.
So he went with his dad, and he says that he recalls lying on the grass at the Forum, the music venue that used to be there before.
Saw my first concert at the Forum.
Nice. Yeah.
Shout out to Chalk Circle and FOTM Chris Tate. Both of them. Those who know. Back to you, Ali.
So he remembers lying on the grass, looking up at the clouds, and listening to the Toronto Symphony Orchestra play Stravinsky. If he was here, he would be even more specific and probably tell you exactly what they're playing. But I'm trying to do my best to recall his recollection. And then
Larry will get his own episode, okay?
Yeah.
This is the Ali episode.
And then they went to the Cinesphere and watched North of Superior, that incredible first IMAX film, or one of the first IMAX films.
Yep, I've seen it. Yep.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough to watch it in the Cinesphere during an Images Festival, like Redux, where they brought it back. But anyway, he, in telling me that story, it really got my imagination going. And I thought, like, he would have been really young. I'm trying to do the math. I think he would have been like a teenager for sure. And as I mentioned already, he went on to make many, many documentaries about classical music. So I like to think that he actually got the kernels of the start of his career at Ontario Place, like being exposed to that kind of culture musically, visually, filmically. So yeah, anyway, that's the Larry component.
No, what we say there is, I think in the FOTM community, we call it the TMU, the Toronto Mike's Universe. No Ontario Place, no Larry, the filmmaker. And shout out to Michael Williams, who said this once.
No Cleveland, no Bowie.
So we got that
Nice.
logic sorted out there. Now, so similar to you, again, I have a few years on you, Ali, okay? But I have lots of memories of the Cinesphere, watching IMAX films. I remember I was at my favorite movie of all time. I was going to say but I think it might still be, was Pulp Fiction. And I remember buying 2 tickets. I took my brother Steve. I remember going to the Cinesphere to watch Pulp Fiction because I'm like, I need to see this on the biggest screen I can.
Yeah.
And I love the Cinesphere. The Forum you mentioned, many a concert, because if you were, it was free if you got into Ontario Place. And I saw many, Burton Cummings would be there, whatnot. There's all these great performances at, shout out to Rob Pruce and the Spoons. He'll be here Monday, by the way. That's St. Patrick's Day. So an episode of Toast with Rob Pruce, but he played the Forum, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, the amusement park. So this was a summer act, the CNE would be open for like 20 days back then. But, all summer long, it's even before, even with Canada's Wonderland, which was, a big drive up to Maple or whatever. But Ontario Place was a destination for families. And you mentioned the water park and just basically an amusement park.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it sounds like similar to me, although I would, during the pandemic, but even before that. So when did they close Ontario Place?
2012.
Why did they close Ontario Place, Ali?
I mean, I've pieced it together from different things I've heard from different people, but my personal interpretation is that, you know, the government opened this thing. It was the government of Ontario's idea to commission this space to kind of rival Expo 67 in Montreal. They wanted something of their own to be proud of, and yeah, like during that time of real nationalism and the centennial and all of that. And it was always owned or sort of operated by Ontario Place Corporation, which was sort of like an arm's length corporation from the government of Ontario. And as time went on, like I don't know all the specifics of like how much it cost to go to Ontario Place at different moments, but it was always very affordable. And as you said, like that price of entry could get you into all of Ontario Place, the films, the concerts with like the world's biggest bands. And I think over time, just the government like didn't know how to run a business like that. And just like with the changing governments too, like it's sort of like everyone had their own agenda. And I don't think it's easy to run a place like that if you're thinking that it's for profit, which I think is there's a lot of different views on what it should be for. I just think that people were always confused about how to handle this space.
Well, it's interesting you tell me that it closed in 2012, because if you'd put a gun to my head and say, when did this close? I would have said earlier, like 2012. I'm surprised it made it to 2012.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it fell into this, like it needed TLC.
It did.
The government of Ontario, and again, governments change over the years. So we've had all three parties in power since 1971. Three major parties, I should say. But it fell into disrepair.
Yeah. And I don't know, like when they did close it down, they cited low attendance, which talking to like some of the security guards, for example, who have worked there for a really long time, were there at the time that it closed. They seem to think that it was still really active, that it really blindsided them that this place was closed down.
Which government shut it down?
It was shut down under the Liberals, I believe.
So is it Dalton McGuinty who's our premier at that time?
I think it was Kathleen Wynne.
Okay.
Am I wrong? I could be really wrong.
I'll Google it while you
Please
talk.
do,
Because I'm going to play here's what I'll do. I'll Google it. Off the top, did you hear the cold open of this program? Of course you did. You were sitting beside me. Okay, so that was an ad for Ontario Place from 1983, which might have been like my personal heyday, okay? If it's a summer day, the family's going to Ontario Place, 1983, I'm there, I'm having the time of my life. So there's like peak Mike experience at Ontario Place. So I'm going to play an ad from like 1988, so 5 years later.
Okay.
And I'll Google who was our premier in 2012. Is that what I'm Googling?
Thank you. Yes, please.
Here we go. Yeah. Here we go.
We're a family of water babies and water baby watchers, of quiet dreamers and die-hard thrill seekers. We're a family of sun worshippers, of film critics, of cafe gourmets, and burger buffs. We're of the water and of the air, showgoers and rock and rollers. So we are one happy family who's very thankful for Ontario Place.
So there we are in the late 80s. We're still happy. The families are still happy for Ontario Place. And let me play the 1990 ad here before I reveal to you who was Premier of Ontario in 2012. I feel like I'm a radio guy now, backselling what you'll hear after this commercial break. Here we go.
It's just huge inside.
Immense. Whoa.
This atmosphere is different. Screams of excitement.
For the kids at Children's Village.
Children have a lot of fun. It's like a giant playground.
There's so many things to do here.
Every day.
It's incredible.
You see bears, you see these guys roughing it.
Oh yeah, don't forget to bring your family.
Ontario Place opens for summer family fun this weekend.
Ontario Place, more fun every day.
That voiceover guy sounded a little bit like Milhouse's dad. Remember when Kirk Van Houten, and he goes, I sleep in a race car. Do you? I don't know. Maybe you don't speak Simpsons. Maybe I'll
No, I know. I can't remember Milhouse's dad, but I mean,
well, it looks a lot like Milhouse, because there's literally an episode where Milhouse, he learns wears a necktie and he tightens it. He sounds like his dad.
Oh, that's funny.
It's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah,
it's actually
yeah.
ridiculous. Well, there's some they made a lot of these things. So okay. By the way, quick check. So the answer to the trivia question is Dalton McGuinty.
Yeah, you were
Dalton
right.
McGuinty. I am right. Thank you. Dalton never been in the basement, but Kathleen Wynne has been in the basement.
Really? That's cool.
There you go. Shout out to FOT and Kathleen Wynne.
I don't feel too embarrassed because she became premiere in February 2013. So it was like not.
It's close.
Yeah, it was close. But I should say, like, I mean, I feel embarrassed because I made a documentary about Ontario Place, and I don't.
Yeah, you're
know,
the expert. You got the sweater.
I don't know this history, but I have a terrible memory. Clearly, the opposite of you. Like
Well,
that's
not
your,
necessarily. Listen, I can't even say your tomorrow.
it's a different kind of memory. I have an okay short-term memory, but also like I mean, if you watch the film, you'll see it's really not a history film at all. And so, as much as I was constantly like, I should really be learning more about the history of Ontario Place, and I did a little bit, but it wasn't the focus of my research to like know all the.
But it is interesting to note because the current government is Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative Party.
Yeah.
I can't say any words. It's a Great Lakes beer, okay? I'm drinking here. Drinking on the job, okay?
Yeah.
But, Doug Ford, rightly so, gets a lot of heat for we'll talk in a moment about what's happening at Ontario Place today.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to note that it was the Liberal Party that shuttered the place. Like if they had invested some money into the TLC of Ontario Place, we wouldn't be in this predicament.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if you talk a lot about Ontario Place on this podcast, I
Ontario Place, Ontario Science Center. There's a long list of things.
I have a long list of people I know who are like such experts on the history of the ins and outs of the politics behind it that maybe they'd love to come and talk to you about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, people like Ken Greenberg, like people who have been very involved in urban planning in this city who like really know. It's just not the way my brain works to retain that type of
That's okay.
information.
I won't ask you the nuts and bolts stuff. We'll stick, but I will right now quickly. I jumped to the live stream, live.torontomike.com, where it's hopping. A lot of people keen to talk about Your Tomorrow, the Ali Weinstein documentary, which will air on TV Ontario. And Jeremy Hopkins, Midtown Gord, he's talking about, boy, I miss Ontario Place. And then Jay Ho chimes in, he misses it too. Hey Ref is on the live stream and wants to know where you went to high school. Would you tell Hey Ref where you went to high school?
I went to Jarvis.
Okay, that's, my son's name is Jarvis. Do you know?
Oh, cool.
So there's a Mary, there's a Jarvis. We're covering all the bases here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went to Jarvis.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then Midtown Gord points out that the Liberal Party shuttering it shouldn't have left it dormant, but they didn't sell it off, he says. So here, let's get back, because I do have a special song that I, thanks to Retro Ontario, I have to play for us in a moment here. But so this version of Ontario Place that you experienced during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, can you describe it? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, because it was a cycling destination and I would find myself in there 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
So I know, but let's hear what you experienced when you would go for a walk in Ontario Place and during the pandemic.
Okay, so for me, like I would say when it closed down, I honestly didn't even pay attention to it closing down because I was an adult. It wasn't being marketed, like it was a family destination, as you mentioned, like an amusement park in the summer.
You were too old for it.
I just hadn't gone in a really long time and I didn't really care that much about it. And then, just so I don't know, in terms of the timeline of events, one thing I do know is that, okay, it closed in 2012. They actually shut the gate so that you couldn't enter. But then in like 2015, 2016, they kind of reopened, like had a soft reopening, didn't tell anyone, but like suddenly you were able at least to just walk through the space during the daytime.
Ali, interesting, because I don't remember this period where you couldn't access it. So maybe I wasn't doing that bike ride then.
No, yeah, there was a brief period of a few years where I feel like they really shut it down. And then it just sort of like, they reopened the doors during the day. They had like a skeleton crew working security there. And it sort of became this de facto public park. But I think very few people were using it because even though it's this amazing, as we all know, like gorgeous waterfront land. Yeah. It is like a weird part of the city that people drive by a lot. And anyway, so in 2020, I was just spending a lot of time outside, walking a lot. And like one day I just wandered down there with my friend. We had like gotten takeout. We just like sat and ate.
Did you go through Trillium Park?
Yeah.
Because there's two ways. There was, now that you can't get
Yeah.
in there. But there was the two ways. Like I would often bike through Trillium, but there was that bridge kind of near where you enter like Molson, Budweiser stage. And there was the bridge you could take to get to the West Island. Because that was open.
Yeah.
That's now closed. But there was a period of time where they put up the gate where you couldn't access Ontario Place through Trillium Park,
Yeah.
but you could still get at it through the bridge that I'm now envisioning.
The West
People could
Island
yes,
entrance.
right,
Yeah. That's right.
So there are two ways in, and so you're just walking around, and what? Did you
Yeah, I was just
experience?
walking around. We just sat on a hill overlooking the lake and ate our food. And it was like a summer day, and we just saw other people milling around. I think we might have seen like a group of people dancing. I think there was like a little dance practice because people just use it for so much stuff because it was free. And yeah, I think we just were really enchanted by this space and wandering around. It was like there were so many nooks and crannies to explore because the landscape design originally just had forested areas, beach areas, like all the areas where the log ride used to be, which now were overgrown, but very accessible. So it felt like you were urban exploring without having to work that hard.
100%, Ali.
Yeah.
It was like frozen in time, like you're you're Indiana Jones or something.
Totally.
And I would love to just, it was all abandoned and nature had kind of taken over.
Yeah.
And it
felt
was
that
all
way.
kind of just very photogenic too. I've taken a lot of photos of myself when I was in Ontario Place, but it was great for exploring. But there was just a great deal of nature. And again, you mentioned PJ Harvey earlier, and I teased who I would shout out now. But Ben Rayner, who he still does some freelance work, but for many years he was at the Toronto Star writing about music. And Ben Rayner's been on this program many times. Ben Rayner named his daughter Polly after PJ Harvey. There's your fun fact.
Nice.
But his go-to secret beach was at Ontario Place Beach, which you cannot access today.
Yeah.
But that was his beach to go to. And, Ben and I talked many times, like, how do we stop what's happening now? But this is a good segue to hear from you. And again, you're not the urban planner expert here, but you made the documentary Your Tomorrow, which people should watch when it's available to stream on YouTube from TVO, and you should watch that premiere. But what is the plan? As if I don't know, I'm just setting you up here. But what is the plan for Ontario Place?
So in 2021, Doug Ford announced that the West Island is going to be leased by Therme, which is an Austrian-owned company that makes spas. Austrian-owned, but prior to that, actually Romanian-owned. The Therme history, if you go and read the magazine Spacing, they have tried to do some investigative journalism into what exactly is Therme, because it seems like a relatively new company that is pouring a lot of money into spas around the world, but like where that money comes from is honestly a question. I don't mean to get too conspiracy theory over here, but it's an interesting story that's not fully understood yet, I would say.
But it is curious that it's not a Canadian company that is opening this spa, this private spa.
Yeah.
So this public park, I'm going to call it a park, Ontario Place, that, and I mentioned, I took a photo. It's on my Blue Sky account at torontomike.com. If you're on Blue Sky, and you can see the photo of my bike in the background, you see, the Cinesphere is still there. So you still see the Cinesphere. And then it's raised.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
It's just flat. Like there's no trees. There's zero nature at this point.
Yeah.
And of course, they're going to be building this private spa for Therme.
Huge indoor spa, which is actually going to cover, like the current West Island footprint is all going to be enclosed in glass. And then when you look at the designs, whatever you see on the outside on the perimeter that's like outdoor space is stuff that they have yet to create via landfill. So like it's a huge spa. I mean, Ontario Place is this beautiful outdoor space. The West Island, I should say, at Ontario Place is this outdoor space, which is now going to be put inside. It's just like, if you're going to make a huge building, like why do you have to take some of the most beautiful land in Toronto?
We're not making any more waterfront.
No.
And a lot of the waterfront is owned by private people. I do that waterfront trail all the time. And, where you are now in New Toronto on your way to Norris Crescent, a lot of that waterfront is people's homes.
Yeah.
Which is not open to the public.
Right, exactly.
But here we are with this. I mean, they did a good job in Trillium Park, okay?
They did, I agree, totally. I wish that so in 2017, they redeveloped Trillium Park, and they did it in a way that I wish they would take that approach for the rest of Ontario Place. It's
absolutely
beautiful land. Like, all they did was they got Walter Kem, an incredible landscape architect who was actually involved in the original Ontario Place, to design more landscape architecture. There's gorgeous like rocky areas and art and an area for a stage where there's free concerts and just gorgeous garden, like lots of garden using.
Well, as we speak, I was there yesterday, there's a light art exhibit that's been set up, and you can go to these stations. I was doing it yesterday, and it's just a beautiful public space.
Exactly.
And it would be amazing if the Ontario Place footprint could be a continuation. You can bike there, walk there, enjoy nature, place for art exhibits, etc. What a great idea, Ali.
I agree. I mean, lots of people will argue, well, we used to have to pay to go to Ontario Place, so like, why are you suddenly saying it's a public park? But I feel like there's multiple things to say to that. One of which is like, okay, well, the government shut it down, stopped programming it, and then it became a de facto public park. And they're our government. They're supposed to be taking care of us and thinking about the public good. And if the people are saying right now, like, what we need is public space. I mean, when Ontario Place was open, Toronto was very different. Like, now we have Liberty Village right by Ontario Place, where there's like tens of thousands of people who live in these tiny condos that don't even have any outdoor space, and Ontario Place has become their literal backyard. There's so many people who use the space who live in the city and don't have a backyard. And so maybe the needs are different now. Also, I think, like, for economically speaking, I think for tourism, having a great public park with cool free art exhibits or whatever it may be is a huge draw for tourism. And I mean, look at like Stanley Park in Vancouver. Like, there is actual monetary value to having something be public.
And speaking for myself right now, I don't understand why this private spa from this Austrian company needs to be on our very rare and special waterfront property.
I agree. I mean, further to that, one thing that's not really talked about very much, but I think it will be as time progresses, is that Doug Ford also expanded Live Nation's lease. So the middle section of Ontario Place, which a lot of it is Budweiser Stage right now, operated by Live Nation, they are going to be redoing this Bud Stage and making it larger and making it indoors, to my knowledge. Like, there's not even, people who knew Ontario Place back in the day with the Forum, a lot of people are like, oh, it changed for the worse back then when they demolished the Forum, which I don't recall. It
was a rotating stage, which was like magic.
It's so cool.
Mike.
It's so cool. It sounds amazing. I mean, I probably did go there as a little kid. I just don't really have strong memories of it, but it's so cool. And I can absolutely see how Bud Stage would be like a real, it's just not as good as that. But, now it's like we still don't have anything else in Toronto like Bud Stage where you can go sit on the lawn and watch a show.
I just bought lawns, like last week I bought a lawn to see Neil Young.
Yeah.
Because I had tickets last July and he canceled it actually. So you got your money back. But he's coming back and I just bought one lawn. It was $74 for one lawn. So there's one big difference right there. Yeah. But I mean, I didn't want to be under they have that roof covering if you get in the 100s and the 200s or whatever. But I wanted to be on the lawns on a summer night, it's in August, to watch Uncle Neil.
Yeah. So Live Nation will be taking a larger footprint at Ontario Place. And they're also a foreign company that's like, not necessarily the most ethical company. So there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on.
The spa.
And you mentioned, the lease that Live Nation has, but what about the lease that Doug Ford's Progressive Conservative Party has given Therme for the private spa?
Well, as with a lot of stuff with this government, things have been very not transparent, and they really didn't want to let the public know anything about this lease. But through a lot of hard work done by these grassroots organizations like Ontario Place for All, trying to stop this happening through different legal injunctions and stuff like that, which have all been turned over so far. We've found out that this lease is for 100 years.
Yeah, like 99 years or something.
It's really wild. It's hard to imagine. Like, I just can't. I like going to the spa. I genuinely do. I go to.
But you would go to the spa if it was on the exhibition ground.
Yeah, right? I probably would. Maybe I would. I don't know. I also prefer, the Russian
spa. How about Vaughan? What if we?
We've got Go Place already in Markham.
Right. Or what about by Woodbine Center up in North Etobicoke? There's probably room there.
There's some nice spas downtown too. We don't need like a massive one, in my opinion. But Yeah, I don't know. Where was
what's
I
it going to look like? So again,
Yeah.
the photo's on Blue Sky, and I know not everybody listening is on Blue Sky, but you can see the Cinesphere is intact.
Yeah.
Because I was going to chain myself to that.
Yes,
if they're gonna
yes.
mess with the Cinesphere.
Yeah.
But everything else is just flat right now. Obviously, at some point, I can't envision, like, do you know, I'm sure you've looked at the design, you've got the documentary, Your Tomorrow, not to be confused with my documentary, which is going to be called Your Toronto. That's coming soon to TVO. But Your Tomorrow, like, how big is, like, what's this going to look like when I'm on the Martin Goodman Trail and I'm taking a photo of Ontario Place?
It's going to be massive. It's like 9 stories high or something like that. It's going to dwarf the Cinesphere. That's like people, there's a lot of advocates for the heritage architecture of the Cinesphere and the glass pods.
Oh, those pods, yeah.
Yeah, they're incredible pieces of
and
architecture.
And they're protected like they're a heritage
They
site?
are,
Okay.
although, again, Ontario Place for All had to fight to make them protected because originally, prior to this plan being announced, like there was a period of time where we all knew that redevelopment was going to happen. We just didn't know what it was. And there was like talk and threat of like, oh, it might become a casino. It might become a Ferris wheel. And Ontario Place for All really advocated like prior to 2019 for the preservation of the architecture there. And so the Cinesphere and the pods are thankfully being protected, but that hasn't stopped the ability of the government to say, okay, well, we're just going to allow this massive development to happen right next to it, and it's going to dwarf that architecture. And it was all designed together. The landscape architecture and the building architecture were done in conjunction by these like superstar rock star architects, Eberhard Zeidler and Michael Huff.
Right.
And I mean, doing my research for the film, like I learned that the architecture of the Cinesphere and the pods, well, actually all of Ontario Place, it's part of this sort of like movement in the 60s of modernist megastructures, this idea of bringing the natural world into the urban world and like just creating this futuristic, idealistic vision for urban dwellers to have access to nature. And it's one of the only fully realized, in fact, I think it's the only fully realized megastructure architecture in the world. So I think people who are really invested in that aspect of it, the heritage of the architecture, are like, okay, it's great that they're not going to be torn down, but by adding this massive building directly next to it, it changes the experience and the feeling. And I think the film, one of my biggest queries going into it is just sort of like, how is it that a physical space can affect us on an emotional level so much? And it's something that I think a lot of us who are not in that sphere of architecture or urban planning, we don't really think about. We take it for granted, how it really affects our mood and our way of looking at the world. And it does. And every time I would go to Ontario Place during the pandemic, I felt this sense of magic and
Magic's
wonder.
a good word for it.
Yeah.
There's magic inherent in that land.
Definitely. So that's all changed already, sadly. And it's going to probably change even more with the building of the spa.
And the fact is, and I had this chat with Matt Elliott, who has a great City Hall newsletter that people should subscribe to. Shout out to FOTM Matt Elliott, Graphic Matt. But I had like straight up, I'm like, is there anything we can do like as a city? But apparently there's nothing we can do because this is property owned by the province and Doug Ford has a majority government and it's happening. Like there's nothing we can do.
I know, it's really depressing.
I'm so depressed right now, Ali.
It's honestly really depressing.
Okay, so the private spa is being built. It's going to be opened. It's going to change how it all looks. What happens to the nature that was there? Obviously, the nature's not there right now. It's literally like a flat, dirt landscape there. But what happens to the nature that was indigenous to that Ontario Place?
Well, and another thing that critics will say, I don't even know who these critics are, like people who...
Who are these people, Ali? Who are these people?
People who listen to what Doug Ford says and takes it at face value. I don't really know. Or like bots online. I'm not sure. But these people will say, it's not indigenous. Like it's not, Ontario Place itself was created out of landfill. It was all designed. So it's not like land, like it was created for the specific purpose of being Ontario Place. And at the time of creation, all these plants were planted then. So it's not like they've been there
So they're
for
saying
centuries.
we can kill them all now to build the spa and everything, and then we can plant them again?
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah, that's the
but
thing.
less space, of course, because this spa is large.
Exactly. And I don't quite understand it all, but they're saying, in the new plans, they're going to replant the same number of trees that were demolished. But I mean, okay, so these trees were planted in like 1970 or so,
Right.
and that's a pretty long time. And these were mature trees. There was like a mature forest there. And there's a lot of wildlife that called the West Island home, especially since the closure in 2012, when there was less human traffic in that area and things became...
Well, nature finds a way. I learned that from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, exactly.
The documentary film Jurassic Park.
Exactly. I mean, there were foxes and beavers and lots of birds and ducks. And like there was so much wildlife, calling that space home. Coyotes. Now people are saying like in Liberty Village, there's been coyotes roaming.
I've been reading about this on Reddit.
They
and
think it's because of Ontario Place, of the
Right.
trees being gone. Like we would
Because they need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my goodness, Ali, you know. So I'm going to just bring in the live stream, and I'm going to thank a couple of partners, and then ask you about something completely different.
Okay.
But let me see here. J-Ho says, he mentions that it was the world's first permanent IMAX theater as Cinesphere, but that's protected, right? I don't have to change. The Cinesphere is not going anywhere. That is going to remain, right?
That's the plan. I think we all should stay vigilant, though. I really do.
Stay vigilant.
Yeah.
Midtown Gord says frozen in time is the perfect way to describe it. He goes, it's hard not to turn this into a conspiracy. It does smell to the high heavens. That's why I've been every quarter when Ed Keenan comes on, I kind of sound like a broken record at this point. But forget the fact that it's a progressive conservative party. If it was the Green Party, if it was the NDP, if it was the Liberal Party, you can smell this deal and it stinks. Like there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. It smells to me, again, this is just Mike speaking for Mike. But Andrew Ward says, when Ontario Place was opened, Premier Davis said, it is a stimulating and permanent symbol of the work and achievement of the people of Ontario. The vision and scope of Ontario Place gives promise to our vast potential. And then his words, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that quote is in our film. Like we have that archival footage showing Bill Davis saying that, which that archival footage, by the way, came in the final hour. We had a lot of our archive is from the Archives of Ontario, which has incredible documentation. Anyone can go ask them for archive. It's very, very affordable, but they're understaffed. So like we put in orders for archive.
This is when you need to make that call to Pakin again.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Pakin and Bill Davis, absolutely. And shout out to Ridley Funeral Home on Premier Davis. But J-Ho, seems like the current Conservative government is trying to eliminate its past projects that leaned more towards the Liberal way of doing things. This is J-Ho speaking for J-Ho. Andrew Ward says, classic case of contracting out. This 99-year lease is ridiculous. And Midtown Gord is now feeling very sad. So we're sorry about that, Midtown Gord. We're going to make you feel sadder in a minute here. But let me just let you know, Ali, that recyclemyelectronics.ca is a website you can go to if you have old electronics, old cables, old devices that you no longer need. Don't throw that in the garbage because those chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, and find out where you can drop it off to be properly recycled. You got it, Ali?
I got it.
How's your beer?
It's great. I'm really enjoying it a lot.
Shout out to Great Lakes Brewery. And speaking of shouts out, Nick Iones stepped up to help fuel this real talk. Nick Iones has a podcast called Building Toronto Skyline, and I highly recommend it. The most recent episode, it's not about the Therme Spa. Maybe one day we'll get to that. It's about One Young, where the Toronto Star building was. That footprint, it's going to be 105 stories. So we talked to Pinnacle. I know.
Wow.
And I wrote, I don't have it here in front of me, but it was, I think the penthouse of this new development will be exactly where the observation deck is of the CN Tower.
Wow. What? No.
Yeah, like that's how high it's going to be. I know. So we talked to Pinnacle. The most recent episode of Building Toronto Skyline, we conversed with somebody from Pinnacle International. They're developing this condo residential tower. And yeah, it's 105. It's going to be the tallest building in Canada, the tallest skyscraper in Canada. And that's coming soon to One Young. They're already working on it. So learn more with Nick Iones, Building Toronto's Skyline. Okay, so that's thank you to everybody. Again, this documentary is called Your Tomorrow. It's not called, if you're looking up Your Toronto, you're not going to find this documentary. It's called Your Tomorrow, and it's going to air on TVO. Remind us what day we can see it there.
March 23rd.
March 23rd, coming soon. Okay, that's very exciting to me here. Are you okay if I get a little serious and a little more serious? This is all serious, what's happening with this private spot. But I wanted to offer you, Ali, my sincere condolences because I want to speak about your Aunt Judith, if it's okay. I know, I'm sorry. And if you don't want to, that's okay. Because you're here to talk Ontario Place. And Mike's...
No, I mean, it's fine. I can talk about it.
I am so sorry that your Aunt Judy was killed when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023. And I know there's no words that I can say to you, but just want you to know that we all feel that pain. I just want you to know.
Thank you. That's really, really nice to hear. Thanks.
And maybe would you just share a little bit about Judy Weinstein?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, Judy, my Aunt Judy. Well, she grew up in Toronto in North York, near Bayview and Shepherd, with my dad. She was the oldest of 3 kids. My dad's the middle child, and they have...
So this is Larry's sister.
That's right, yeah. They have a younger sister named Andrea who lives in Connecticut now. But yeah, Judy was a writer, an artist. Like, she used to make these really incredible puppets, massive, life-sized, kind of scary puppets. She was a teacher to children, a special needs teacher, an English teacher, and she moved when she was very young, in her early 20s, to Israel. It was never really a part of, like, it's interesting because growing up with a Jewish family here in Toronto, like my dad's family, I'm half Jewish, and so my dad's family, Israel, I just feel like Israel wasn't on my radar growing up. My family never went to synagogue. I would say we're like culturally Jewish, like very, very secular.
Right.
And
that means you'll eat bacon with brunch.
Yeah, well, I won't because I'm vegetarian, but my grandma, my grandma
well,
will.
We'll get back to that vegetarian comment in a moment here, but please continue.
My grandma eats bacon, But anyhow, she went on a trip to Israel, and basically, long story short, she fell in love, and I'm probably oversimplifying, but she met her husband, Gadi Haggai, and who was a saxophonist, and he was born in Israel, and she moved there and had 4 kids, and they lived for over 40 years on kibbutz near Oz, which was one of the hardest hit places on October 7th, right next to the border with Gaza. And it's, it's obviously a very, very, very complicated story politically, but
it's not complicated that there was a terrorist attack by Hamas.
Yeah.
And your aunt and her husband were murdered.
That's correct. And it's, civilians many civilians who were murdered, and people in that region too, without, this is a generalization, but like, I think a lot of the people in that area were some of Israel's most left-leaning, progressive people. Like, really, it's just really ironic in that sense. But I mean, not that anyone should be dying, or any civilians for sure should not be dying anywhere in this. But anyway, yeah, I really, really appreciate it. And it's been, it's been hard. But I mean, crazily, not only were they murdered on that day, but actually they're considered hostages because they were taken into Gaza, and they we're still waiting for them to be returned.
So Hamas is keeping their bodies in captivity.
Yeah.
So fucked up, Ali.
It is fucked up.
I mean, there's a lot of fucking tragic, sad things happening in this big blue marble that we all live on. But what happened on October 7th, 2023, just awful. And that it hit so close to home for you that your aunt was a victim. And I'm glad you were able to talk to me about it, because
I appreciate it.
And again, I produced the show for Dana Levinson. I still produce this show, but she's actually very busy with her advocacy that she doesn't record as often as she used to on the DL. But she doesn't feel safe in Toronto. She lives in North Toronto, North York, and she has been very vocal against Olivia Chow, that she and her family of proud Jewish people don't feel safe in this city of ours. Are we doing enough to protect our Jewish citizens from anti-Semitism?
I mean, that's a really interesting and big question. And I would say, like, overall, I'm a fan of Olivia Chow. And I feel like, of course, there's been some missteps here and there. Not even just, I'm not talking about this particular issue, but I really like her. I think she's doing the best she can, personally. I mean, yeah, I know people have been mad at her at certain moments. There's also, I know lots of people who have been working really hard with the pro-Palestinian cause who have also been mad at her. It's a tough time for politicians. I don't mean to like cut them any slack, but I will say I think that they're kind of getting
Is
it
there a
from
bit of
both
a
ends.
There's a bit of a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
100%. And so
And silence is going to be perceived by some as like you're either with us or against us. And this city of ours is the most multicultural city in the world.
Yeah.
And everybody should feel safe.
It's really tricky because I think one thing that's so difficult with this issue, and I mean, I think you can see it in me as I try to talk about my aunt. You asked me a really beautiful question to talk about who she was, which I immediately went into the politics a little bit. And because it's so hard to simply talk about the humanity. And that's something that I think everybody wants. Like everyone just wants some recognition as humans, whether you're Palestinian or Israeli or Jewish or whatever. And it's very difficult with this issue to like say one thing about one group of people who are hurting without it being like, well, an erasure of the other side. And again, I say the other side, but like, honestly, I don't mean to sound too naive or something, but I really don't think there are two sides. And I think it's like I don't know.
Well, let me ask you a different question. Because I mentioned, actually, I think I referenced her earlier, that Antonia Zerbasias was over here last week. And it was a very interesting conversation, but a debate. At the end of that episode, there was a discussion. And I'm going to ask you this, and also, I'm just a Gentile, okay? I'm just observing and love everybody in this blue. Well, not everybody. There's somebody. There is somebody whose obituary I hope I wake up to. But, he's an orange man. This is all I'm going to say. He's orange. He's a giant Cheeto.
I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Can you be, and loaded big question, you can pass on it, and we'll play out with some Rob Bruce on keyboards here. But can you be against Israel, the leadership in Israel, and the policies of Israel, and not have an ounce of anti-Semitism in your body? Like, are these mutually exclusive? Like, if you're against Israel and their leadership, their current leadership, Netanyahu, and policies, does that equate being anti-Semitic?
I personally think that you can 100% be against Israel's policies, against Netanyahu, and be not anti-Semitic. I 100% think that. You're speaking for Ali Weinstein here. Look, I will just say, I think there's a lot of bad players who are the reason why my aunt and uncle died and why 50,000 people in Gaza have died since. I think all those civilians are unfortunately pawns in a much bigger game. That's a really fucked up game. Yeah. Amongst the people who I blame for all these people's deaths, and there's many, Netanyahu is top of that list for me, in my opinion. So I think you can certainly be against Israel and not be anti-Semitic. I mean, I also think that there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. And I'll just say this for Ms. Levinson. I don't know if she's listening.
Shout out to Dana Levinson. She might be listening.
I do feel a lot of, I have felt, especially towards the beginning after October 7th, a lot of fear personally about a lot of the rhetoric with a lot of people who have just heard about this issue and now it's their main cause, and a lot of people have attached their own identity to being pro-Palestinian and maybe don't know a lot of the nuance, and some, not all by any means, of the rhetoric out there. There are bad players too that just want to create polarization and hatred here in North America, far away from where this is happening. So I think there's a huge risk and really legitimate fear with like people here like getting swept up in this issue and feeling hatred, and maybe some of that's misdirected. It's so complicated. It's so complicated.
As they say on Facebook, it's complicated. Okay, absolutely. There's a lot of nuances here, but I appreciate you chatting with me about that and your perspective. And again, my sincere condolences.
Thank you,
Judy Weinstein and her husband. And
yeah, thanks.
Wow. Okay, your tomorrow, my notes say. Okay, It's not called Your Toronto. Your Tomorrow. It's on TVO, coming soon. You made this. I hope you feel very proud.
Thank you.
I watched it, by the way, because I received a media link.
Oh, nice.
And I got to watch it, and it was close to my heart. And I, as you know, I said, get me Ali in the basement. And as I guess I can share that there was a little miscommunication because the same people who were going to bring Ali Weinstein to the Toronto Mike basement also were responsible for Greg Keeler being on a Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a miscommunication because Greg was zooming in that you were going to zoom in, but I said no.
I'm glad I came to the basement.
You wouldn't have got, and again, I didn't, it wasn't an appropriate time to mention your vegetarian. My lasagna is meat.
Damn.
I know. But you know what's funny? Tomorrow's guest won't mix meat and dairy.
Okay.
Therefore, I actually have one vegetarian lasagna in the freezer for tomorrow's guest. But this is my bad. I've screwed up. I'm wondering if I give you his lasagna.
Well,
and then I explained to Mike Wilner that I will bike over a lasagna when he gets back from spring training.
I mean, I would take the lasagna because my editor of Your Tomorrow is about to have a baby any day, and I could donate it to her. She's not vegetarian.
Okay.
I could donate it to her meal train.
What a sweet person you are. But you do get the beer.
Yeah.
And you got the measuring tape.
Great.
So life is good.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for this and that.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you for doing this. We got to take our photo by the Toronto tree, and your editor is getting a meat lasagna from Palma Pasta, all beef. Okay. And that brings us to the end of our 1,649th show. Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, Building Toronto Skyline, and Ridley Funeral Home. I'm actually recording a new episode of Life's Undertaking in a few hours with Brad Jones. So there'll be a new episode of Life's Undertaking later today. See you all tomorrow when my guest is Mike Wilner, COVID fearful Mike Wilner in the basement because he just got COVID and feels now he has an immunity for a period of time. So he's going to be in the basement. We haven't had Mike Wilner on in a while because of this cautious behavior that I madly respect. But Mike Wilner, tomorrow, Toronto Mike, that's episode 1,650. See you all then.